Excellent. Awesome. Who's thirsty? You have water. That's good. All settled. Good to go. And now the screen went to sleep. Okay. Welcome again. We're going to do a series of really quick flash talks to get you a little bit inspired about what we do and what we are about. Talking a little bit about back-end stuff, a little bit about front-end stuff, customers, nuts and bolts, stuff like that. And then we're hoping to keep going something like a discussion or Q&A, where feel free to ask anything from us, and we do our best to explain about that to you. Sounds okay? Okay, cool. First of all, what I'm not going to do in very great detail is what TransferWise's business is about. I'm actually kind of believing newspapers have done the job for us, or if they haven't, then I'm going to suggest that we just talk about that later. What's cooler than a million? Of course, a billion. Quite recently, we transferred over £1 billion, which is quite nice, because we need to make sure our customers know we are there for them and we continue to be there for them, and we will just not magically disappear with the money people in UK have transferred to Estonia. That aside, now I'm going to talk a little bit about how Crystal K moves money to $H, just to give you a bit of an idea how this billion has moved across the multiverse. I have two missing arrows. I hope to compensate with, oh cool, okay. So let's say we have Crystal K in UK who wants to send some cash to his friend in Estonia called David. And what he does first is comes to TransferWise.com, creates a request, says, hey, this is the amount of money I want to send to David. We ask him to do a deposit. They do a deposit through one of our partners. And when we get the money, we try to figure out who actually gave us the money. Do we know what to do with that? How to put A and B together? What happens next is we're gonna try to see if there's someone doing the same in the other direction. That's what the whole peer-to-peer bit is about. And hopefully there is, and we're able to pay some money to Dalit again through our partners. Now, what do you figure are the tricky parts in this equation? It's actually quite trivial, right?
Balance.
Balance?
Balance of partners. Enough balance in both the partners.
Liquidity, pretty much, yeah.
What about the timing?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of when does the money arrive? And what do you do in the meantime with the stair?
Good question.
Matching
Good
what
question.
is not.
Let me think something. So I can hear the questions coming, so keep them up. We're not going to talk about that in detail now. Sorry?
You ask us to make a pipeline of questions.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to later pick our favorites and then answer those. That's right.
So it was the answer.
So this slide is meant to be like a conversation starter in a way that we can later come back to this and maybe it will help us to explain a bit more about what we're doing. This is obviously ridiculously simplified, so we do have a lot more to handle with our systems.
What about this very much provider? Decentralized system.
Well, yes, I mean, peer-to-peer matching is putting the two sites together.
Okay. The solution.
So this is a very brief intro about what we do. Now, appearing arrows. Okay, cool. What are we like? First of all, I very much hope and believe everybody who comes to work at TransferWise in the morning is really passionate about reinventing banking. They're not passionate, maybe that passionate about cleaning rooms, they're maybe not that passionate about hiring people, but what we come together to do is to reinvent financial services. We come together to make our customers' life better. We don't do that just to write beautiful code. That's just the best thing we as engineers are able to do to make our customers happy. And last but not least, we don't hire bitches and we don't hire assholes. First of all, because they tend to come in and start polluting the culture and the atmosphere. And secondly, people are not that easy to get rid of, especially in Estonia. And some bitches and assholes are good in hiding that for about 4 months.
How you test it?
So you have to have a really good algorithm about this.
Yeah, how you test
It's an upfield, never fails.
it? We have some play pitch like testing. Play pitch.
What do you mean?
We have some program for testing. We have fast overrun.
Wow.
We have to make some tests.
Room for improvement. And if there is interest enough, we might be opening a competition for the asshole detection. But that was a really, really slim intro to what guys are going to talk about next. And I pass the ball to Ben.
I need the mic. Maybe a good idea. So, slide says Groovy and Rails. That's basically a quick overview of the stack we use. First prototype of the application was actually, I guess this is not important, it's not for the mic. First prototype was actually implemented by some of the first commits are actually coming from the Cristo itself. You can see that in Git history. That's ancient history. For some reason we picked Grails. That's another topic, but we are using Grails. So it's a web framework, and basically it started out by under the name Groovy on Rails, until the Ruby on Rails guys got a little bit pissed off, so they asked to change the name, so it's now Grails, but it's heavily inspired by Ruby on Rails. And Groovy itself was also influenced in many ways by Ruby. So it's a JVM language, one of the most popular dynamic languages, and actually in the Plumber talk, it was nice to hear that there's actually applications being built in Groovy for its nice properties, especially for prototyping. Right, so Groovy. I'm going to run through a quick demo of how writing Groovy helps you write less code. So let's start with this Java class, wall text. So it's a very simple example. I don't know if you can see way up there, but it's a user class. So we have an ID, first name, last name, and a series of payments that this user has made. And of course, all fields will be private in Java. And you need setters and getters. With, for example, you can generate the getters and setters with a good IDE, but it's still a lot of code. Also have some logic here, for example, a simple comparator for sorting the payments of a user by the amounts. And some simple, the code might not make sense, but it's to show the features of the language, like merge a payment, get big payments that are over 100,000. We think in big numbers. Maybe not big enough for some of you, but this will work as an example. And that's toString. So, right. So let's start transforming this into Groovy code.
For some reason, all of the methods are unused, shown by
That's my only class in my small application. This is not real production code. Right, so to show how we can convert this to Groovy is that actually almost all Java code is valid Groovy code. So this is actually Groovy as well. You can compile it as Groovy. And you can actually use all of the class libraries that the runtime environment has. But the nice feature of the language is that you don't need semicolons. So that's one change right there. Less typing already. You stick to the convention of one statement per line. You don't need semicolons. You can have them if you want, but they're optional. Second change I made. So I actually removed the getters and setters. So in Groovy, you have a private, well, there's an important distinction here. I removed the getters and setters because you don't need them. But when I looked into it, I discovered actually that the private keyword will actually be ignored by the Groovy compiler. That's, I think they will fix it in Groovy 3. But basically, if you need a private field, I think you need to have empty setters or getters or whatever. I'm not familiar with that, but just like this. Yes?
Sorry, a question.
Yes?
Are you assuming that we are talking about a model class currently, right?
This is pretty much a model, yes.
Yes, and in Ruby on Rails, you don't need a getter and setter class because active record does it for you, defines getters and setters. But here, some library behind it does it also for how it's happening.
So the Grails framework also has something similar. You can have basically domain objects where you just add fields and you can access the database just by accessing the fields. But it will work even if it's not like a data access object. The Groovy compiler actually inserts the setters and getters for you. So the thing with this is that if you want the setters and the getters, you can actually implement it, and they will be called automatically. So you can actually, I think I actually made a change here, and in the next slide, if you just use p1.amount, that actually calls the getter if it's there. If it's not there, it uses the default implementation, which just returns the field. So you can actually, if you have like, for example, this method, get peak payments, you can actually just access it using .peak payments. So it will convert that. But this slide shows the toString annotation. So here we needed the toString method. In Groovy, you can add an annotation, and it adds the toString method for you. So you can actually, it includes all the fields by default. So there you have it. Next transformation. Okay, let me go back. So we have get payments sorted by amount. So it gets all the payments, makes a copy, and sorts it by the amount. But in Java, you need to have this comparator. In Groovy, you just do result.sort by IT amount. And the brackets there actually it's a closure. So they'll actually sort by the closure. You can actually have code there. Like for some objects, you can sort by another field if you want. You can have an if there if you need to.
Like in Java 8,
Like in Java 8. So Java 8 actually introduced what Groovy had since the start. Lambda or anonymous function or whatever you call them. But this is actually built into the language itself. There's a lot of like functional style stuff that does this. So in Groovy, you do a lot of this passing or closure around. So the next step, let me go back, get peak payments. So you iterate over the list of payments, and if it's over the 100,000, you add it to the result. In Groovy, you can do .findAll, you pass a closure, which evaluates true if it's over 100,000 and includes it in the result. So this is the kind of functional coding that I'm talking about. And I think that's the last one. So here I just removed all the types. So you can use def, so that shows it's a dynamic language. If you need types, in many places it's important. For example, for us, it's a money transfer service. We don't want to have problems because somebody forgot to define what type of variable is. Like most of the time, we tend to use types. But if you need to do some quick prototyping or whatever, you can just use them if you want. They're optional again. And here I have a comparison. So it's a little arbitrary example, but it can show how writing in Groovy can actually speed up. It can give you the leverage to write more code in a smaller amount of time.
Question is,
it look something like Python or?
What do you mean look like Python?
Yeah, the end result is kind of similar.
Well, it was inspired by many of these scripting languages, so like Ruby and Python. So,
Looks a bit like Swift.
but the thing is, it's you can actually find the article where one of the core authors of Groovy says how Swift was pretty much inspired, in large part, by Groovy. But the thing is that it runs on the JVM, so you can actually use Java from Groovy. So that's the big thing.
Sorry, question.
Yes?
But you still have to compile this language. It's not being interpreted automatically, right?
So there's a compiler which compiles into JVM bytecode. So it runs in just-in-time mode, basically. I think the early versions were only interpreted, so there was an interpreter written inside the JVM.
What data are you using for development?
IntelliJ. Why? Looks weird?
It has all the syntax of Ruby built in, right?
Yes, it has very good support with Groovy and Grails as well, actually. But many features in Grails, you can control click and it shows you where you use that feature. Like if it didn't have the support, you couldn't control click and stuff like that.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So why aren't every Java developer using this already in Java?
There are catches. So I have one slide for that. I don't have enough time for that, but I think the main thing is performance, because it's dynamic. I think it uses the invoke dynamic bytecode, which slows down runtime a lot. No? Some people know more about this.
Question to me. Are you using static compile checks?
We are not using it a lot. This is something we should
use those more and more.
we should look into it. Yeah. Yes. Right. So there are catches to using Groovy, but the thing is, for example, Gradle is built in Groovy. Like big projects, like even Hibernate, are using Gradle and they're running Groovy. Yes. Question.
Are you using Ruby for the bulk of your code?
Right now, almost all of the application is written in Groovy. So, sorry?
And the other half is all.
Almost all.
Almost. Why almost?
Well, the backend is all Groovy, I think. But we are not completely sure if everything will stay in Groovy, but I think that's a topic for another discussion, because there are advantages and disadvantages. So for rapid prototyping, it's really good.
I have one question that if you have some private feedback and you want to hide it.
So yeah, that's the tricky part, because I think before Groovy 3 comes out, you would need to have empty setters and getters, as far as I'm aware.
So then if you want to have some private stuff, then you can do second.
I think that's true. I didn't research this thoroughly, but I think that's true, yes. But I have to move on now, because otherwise I will run into other people's time. Downsides. I have a couple of slides here. I talked about Groovy, but about Grails as well. The framework itself is similar to Groovy in that it's meant for, not meant for, but it's very useful for rapid prototyping. You can have a small demo app running in like 30 minutes. But there's an example how long it takes to start the application itself. The blue line is this demo app that I just did in 30 minutes. Starts in 20 seconds, and our app at the moment takes 1.5 minutes to start up. So luckily we have reloading, so you don't have to start it up all the time, but this is one of the big downsides at the moment. This can be improved, but by default, I think Spring Source guys that are working on Grails, they don't put much thought into performance. And running an integration test. So just one test before it's even running, just to get the environment started up. For a simple demo app, 20 seconds. For our app, it's 1 minute. So that's one of the big downsides. Again, this can be improved, but for now we're stuck with this.
Question, please.
Yes.
In Ruby and Rails, for example, there is, and in Ruby in general, there is a number of gems which are like external libraries, and this is considered as one of the advantages, and especially for like less experienced developers to get started with the language. How things are going in Groovy and in Grails particularly on this topic?
So there's support for something like gems. There's plugins in Grails. There's a lot of them. There's like a central repository, but Groovy is way younger than Ruby, so there are way less gems way less plugins than there are for Ruby. So there's support for this kind of stuff, but it's not.
If you're talking about real life, do you experience a lot of issues when you have to implement a solution for yourself, for example, for fading agents or some trivial stuff? Like
For the basic stuff that the web application needs, I think there's a plugin available. Stuff like indexing and searching and like a lot of these features are available in plugins, but I think some of them are like unmaintained, the ones that are less used. So there's always downsides and upsides. You have to balance them. But we can.
But it's more like not a problem than a problem.
We haven't experienced it as a problem. Yeah. But I have to move on because I think I'm running out of time. I don't want to take it away from others. The last slide, I did a simple sample in Visual VM, and you can see even before it starts doing any real work, it's the internals are Groovy. It's like invoke method. There's a lot of overhead for the kind of dynamic stuff that it allows you to do, both in performance and also in trying to understand what's going on behind the scenes when you're trying to understand performance issues, for example. So I think the conclusion is that it's good for rapid prototyping and implementing new features fast, but then as your application matures, there will be problems. That's it from me.
I'm going to talk about Hibernate or Hibernate. I'm not even sure how do you pronounce it properly. So Hibernate, this is probably if most of you are like from Java related world. No .NET developers love today, unfortunately. So Hibernate is a ORM system, object-related mapping system, which basically allows you to forget about database at some extent and start just like writing your code in writing your objects, and Hibernate magically converts it to some database, to some SQL calls, and somehow it works. So this is ORM and Hibernate as one of example. We are using Groovy Grails, as Pep already told us, and Grails is using this GORM, which is basically heavily built on Hibernate. And this is really beautiful thing in the sense that you have a IntelliJ, as one of the previous presenters told, you just like press enter, and it just like runs code for you. You have Groovy, which generates code for you also, and then you have Hibernate, which converts this code somehow to SQL calls. And it somehow magically works, and you don't even need to turn your brain on. It just like works. But at some extent, it works up to some scale, up to some moment. In our case, this moment probably happened when this cake with 1 billion like appeared or something like that. And then you start realizing that something is wrong. There are some issues, and there's a catch basically. There's a catch for Hibernate. And there you see it like dark side of Hibernate. The problem is that Hibernate is basically tuned for pretty much like simple use cases, like simple web applications, request response, short sessions, and so on. In our case, we have like some use cases when we need to process, well, not very big amount of data, but like significant one. And then Hibernate fails to work like the easy way then. You can still tune it, you can still, make it work like really fast, but you have to look in kind of inside, underneath. And this is actually like sort of like philosophical question about Hibernate. So you have this easy sync, which like allows you not to sync, and suddenly you have to actually sync. And I can give you, so there are kind of several issues, and a lot of people actually facing them. We are not the first one, we are not, of course, the last one. One of them, I can give you an example of one of them. So Hibernate session, basically when you're doing some SQL queries, when you're pulling your data from database, it caches everything in Hibernate session. And if your Hibernate session is like long enough, and your data is, well, kind of your model is complex enough, then it kind of starts piling up in your memory, and there's the problems begin. The fact that they take a lot of memory is not actually issue. Well, current machines are actually like have a lot of memory. The problem is that Hibernate has this flash sync. So every time you want to write back to database something, Hibernate checks for changed objects and flashes them to database. And if you have big amount of stuff in your memory, in your session, then it basically checks it. And things start to behave very slowly. For example, for retrieving like 1,000 or several hundred of records, you spend basically minutes if your session is like long enough. And this is what we actually faced. And we realized that the problem is actually a combination of kind of Hibernate, how we use Hibernate, and Groovy or Grails itself. How Grails actually, or Groovy forces you to write the code. So one of the examples that Grails is actually, there's this model, I'm not sure if you're aware, the service domain object controller. I think most of the people using it, especially in Java, I guess. And in Grails and in Groovy, the service is by default transactional. So you write the service, basically Groovy generates service for you, generate the code, and it's transactional. All the calls run under transaction. And when Hibernate is running on transaction, it does a lot of flashes and basically slows it down. So if you spend all your time like writing code without thinking, and you have all those services, all of them transactional, Hibernate is trying to run on them, you end up with such situation. So you reach some point when you have to basically change your approach to development. You have to change your philosophy. Even you still have this IntelliJ, if you still have the Groovy, if you still Hibernate, you still have to kind of, well, of course you can say, whatever, let's drop it and rewrite everything in Java, or I don't know, in C, and use like pure SQL, but usually this is not feasible. So the easiest way, the sort of compromise, is to start actually thinking about performance, what actually happens under Hibernate, underneath, how it calls database, how much SQL queries you actually do, and things like that. There are also like a lot of ways to tune Hibernate. There are a lot of configurations, a lot of special functions, how you call, how to limit your sessions, how you flash or clear your caches, and so on and so on. But in most cases, you don't need it. You just need to properly organize your model. You need to reduce amount of transactions. Well, this like seems sort of obvious, but this is the like simple things that you probably do. And you actually need to start measuring your application, what it does, what kind of how many queries, how many logs it generates, and so on and so on. So what I'm trying to say with my kind of short talk is to kind of pay attention on controversy of all these like nice stacks like IntelliJ, Groovy and Hibernate in that case, and how eventually you hit the wall and you're forced to behave like, I don't know, as a proper developer in some assembler way, or I don't know, C++ way, whatever. And I guess this is it. Yeah.
Do you use any ready tools to measure your performance on production side? Like Neural, for example, which...
Yeah. So we are collecting statistics, of course. Yes.
Have you tried to cluster your server, database server?
This is actually a good question. The problem is actually not in database side. No. We don't have any problem. We actually don't have any problems in database. We're using MySQL, and at first we actually thought that the problem is there, that we are somehow not caching our data on MySQL side, or we are kind of using indexes wrong. And in some cases it was right, but main kind of bottleneck was kind of on application side, not on database, not in SQL side. In Hibernate.
Question.
Yeah?
Question. When Pep spoke about Groovy and it has downsides and the application is just working around it, the Hibernate seems to be all downside.
Yes and no. So basically, Hibernate allows you to reach the 1 billion K. If you don't have Hibernate, it would take us, I don't know, 10 years to do that. Hibernate there, and we are there. We are here. Otherwise, now of course, if you go to Google for Hibernate, everyone is like cursing it. Oh, I hate Hibernate and stuff, but you have to admit, people are still using it, and it's still running everywhere somehow. So it has positive stuff, positive side.
Can you reveal any concrete changes you made to your use of Hibernate for transactions?
Well, basically, we just remove transaction everywhere we can do. Everywhere cool. Or for example, we had like.
Just like we did.
Yeah, this is like very.
I put money in, but it doesn't go in. Take it out, that it doesn't go.
It goes.
Actually, one really specific example that also illustrates how this rapid growth comes into play when you are maybe not using your tools in the most optimal way is that, as Sergey also said, the persistence context of the Hibernate session is growing and growing. And if you have, let's say, 1,000 entities, it takes a lot less memory than 10,000 entities or 100,000 entities. And one specific thing that we have done in multiple places is just brought the lifetime of the session down and just be smarter about their batch operations, which is, in hindsight, everything is really obvious. But then again, when you're trying to raise your customer numbers, you don't think about that stuff so much.
How did you see that slowdown when it happened? How did you detect it? Who saw it? This customer is calling like the money doesn't go in, or how did you detect it at one point?
So basically what we did was having logging and monitoring, and by that we saw that it was getting slower. But the hard part was that it was the same code, it was running fast, but sometimes it started to get slow, and we didn't understand what is the reason for that. Is it on the database, is it on the Hibernate layer? And then we found out it actually a relation to the size of the session.
So it wasn't easy, or it wasn't easy to discover, or quite complex?
It took quite some time. So we started from the database layer, so the database layer was fast. Then went on to the Hibernate layer. Hibernate used some cache, so we had an idea maybe it's on the cache layer. And then on top of Hibernate there was this form layer, which is this Groovy object relational mapping layer. So we had like 4 places to look at. So it took some time. It wasn't like obvious from the start.
Why is Alvar smiling?
I'm just a happy guy.
Correct.
One billion of tokens So how many records in the database?
The biggest table.
I'm trying to come up with a ballpark number that.
You don't want to say it's classical.
Billions.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let me pass the flag.
Very smooth, very smooth.
Hello? You can hear me?
Not us.
That's good. So I was checking. Brilliant.
You can check your Facebook page, man.
Just giving a status update. Start. Cool. Good evening. My name is Mark McGloin, and I'm a conversion engineer at TransferWise. I'm a Norwegian Irishman. I've been in Estonia for a few weeks now, moving from London, where I was working for a technology consultancy called Accenture within their digital commerce practice. So helping some of the larger UK retailers, online retailers, to optimize their conversion. I'm in the team at TransferWise called Conversion and Experience, and our sole game, our sole purpose is to ensure that the customer experience on our site is smooth and frictionless, so that we can convert as many bank-slaying revolutionaries as possible. So it's all about we've talked quite deep level code and engine building here today. What we're all developing this code for is to ensure that customers are solving their problems, and that's kind of the focus of the conversion team. So I want to go through a short story for an experiment we ran on our website quite recently, and hopefully this could be an introduction to a 101 intro to landing page optimization and running A/B tests on your site. So it's less code for more customer focus. We've talked about growth. I'm a bit worried now whether I put some classified information up, but I don't think it's too bad. We talked about growth, and we've seen immense growth the last year at TransferWise. Today there'll be about 23,000 unique sessions on our website. This time a year ago it would have been less than 3,000 in a day. This is monthly average sessions over the last year. So there's been a significant growth, and we're seeing this growth week by week now as well. So obviously someone's doing their job right, and that's the marketing team. The marketing team have had some really creative stunts, particularly within our key market area being the UK, and gotten a lot of media traction. We also have a lot of, I don't know if you've been to our site once, you probably see our advertising popping up at all sorts of other websites or on your Facebook accounts. So we have a very active marketing team that ensures we're getting a lot of traffic to our sites, increasingly a lot of traffic. And it's also word of mouth. And I think kind of our key growth strategy, and we are on a growth strategy path, is a great product. If you have a great product that solves the customer's problem effortlessly, they will talk about it and they will promote it. And that's why the key kind of performance indicator for our team, for a conversion and experience team, is Net Promoter Score. How likely are our customers going to recommend our service to their friends? So we're getting traffic to our site, and this is where my job begins, and this is where the conversion and experience teams begins. Okay, we've gotten people interested, they're excited, they land in, they come. It's the equivalent to you're in a party, you're in a DEVCLUB networking event, and you give someone, a new person, a handshake, and in those 7 seconds where you feel the strength of their handshake, look them in the eyes, check out what clothes they're wearing, you're asking, is this someone I'd enjoy having a conversation with? Is this someone that could potentially be a good friend? The same question someone asked for TransferWise, is this someone I trust gave €1,000 to send to my aunt, girlfriend, or business partner in a different country? So it's all about, so the aim of the conversion experience team is to have a friendly handshake, cool enough to think that, hey, we're not like the banks, but also firm enough to give you the confidence that we're actually going to take care of your money and ensure it gets to where it's meant to go quickly. Though this is our handshake, but there are a lot of people that turn away straight off. Our main funnel starting point. We're quite lucky as a retailer, fortunate in that once you go into as you call it, the funnel, or once you start doing a transaction, very few people drop off. So the attrition rate within the funnel is very low. However, our landing page bounce rate, exit rate, people leaving once they've seen the landing page is quite high, which I think can quite explainable, which I can explain away. The main target on the page is obviously to get started now and you'll start attraction. We know that if someone goes down there, they're very unlikely to jump out. But there's only roughly about 20% of new users go into the funnel, and then we have 60% that exit. Now, this is the one that the experiment I'm going to talk about was all about, to try and optimize how many people actually start the funnel and the number of people that leave. Now, obviously, we solve a problem, and the problem is transferring money. If you're not needing to transfer money, even though we have a brilliant landing page and we can convince you that we can do a good transfer, if you don't need to transfer money, you're not going to transfer money at that time. So that's again a reason for why you could have quite a high bounce rate. So our experiment that we were running, we wanted a cool and firm handshake. So we had a few designs coming up, and we started designing the experiment. Now, obviously, with an experiment, you have to take in a lot of factors within the web. There are lots of things that are going to affect if someone's going to want to transfer or not. One key thing that you can see here is the time of the day. Someone that lands on our site on the Tuesday is significantly much higher chance that they'll convert than if they come on a Saturday, Sunday. So this is our weekly traffic going up and down for the weekend. So very few people want to transfer during the weekend.
Are you using the Google Analytics e-commerce plugin?
Yes. So in terms of our analytics setup, we're using Google Analytics and Mixpanel for all the data. And in terms of running experiments, we're using. I'll come back to some more details there, but we're using the Google Analytics experiments, and it's particularly the Google Analytics experiments API, where you can actually do it server side and optimizely for a quicker front end optimization tests. So we were in designing it. I think this is the key lesson in designing a test, is that you can't create a sterile environment. There are lots of things that are going to affect your experiment. We already mentioned the time of day. The source of traffic, there's a huge difference whether someone's coming from a Facebook link or an invite referral from an email. That's going to impact, and you have to take this into account in an experiment. In this case, clearly we have to make sure we run over at least a 7-day period, so we get the different variation within the week. So we started, I think there are quite a few, in terms of designing the experiment and doing an experiment engine. There's some really, really fascinating, great experiment engines by, I think, Coursera using Gertrude, Etsy, they're called Feature API, and Facebook has Planout. They're all on GitHub, really nice documentation. We've started developing our own engine. I think it's going to get hopefully up to their level, but for statistical analysis and data capturing, we're using the Google Analytics setup. So the engine, in terms of kind of determining variations, setting up variations, and showing different variations to customers, is all back end. We've developed that, and then the analytics data we sent to Google Analytics for processing. So we were going to redesign the experiment. It was to redesign our landing page. We had two versions. This is the old one, the one on the right. The one on the left was a new design, and we're a very data-driven company. And if we're going to make a change, we have to make sure that we can actually show that there's return on investment and it successfully improves the customer experience. We had two versions that ran up. So you can see this. The second one on the left was all taking into account this handshake I was talking about, cool yet also confident. So a lot of trust indicators. We had an activity map that actually gives a real-time feed of transfers happening. And also from a third-party provider, we have reviews. So it's on the third-party site called Trustpilot, and quotes from customers. And then the old version on the site on the left. Again, our brilliant customer support team, white and clear. Which one do you think won? No idea. Okay. Well, so that's good. So that's a good starting point. So let's test it. Yeah?
No, what you guess
Yeah.
could be wrong 50-50. So.
True, and actually what we did with the new one, we had 3 variations, so to kind of try out a few more things. But it's actually a good starting point, and maybe not have so much an idea and let the data speak for itself. So we ran.
It's vastly different, those two, that which component plays, it's difficult to guess. How do you guess?
And let's, well, we didn't need to guess because we could find out. So let's go to that. That's the whole point of running the we have enough, the great thing with TransferWise, we have enough traffic with 23,000 sessions a day to get really valuable data quick enough. So we ran the test, and actually the new design, the designer was obviously very happy. One, we got overall, looking at all the sessions, we had a 4% uplift against the 3 variations. I won't go into detail of them, compared to the old version. Good, happy days, great return on investment for a new design of the homepage. However, what I think is really, really important when you run an experiment like this, and I think my friend here over here was onto it, try to understand why. Because if you understand why, it can inform your next experiments and next designs. So why did the design on the left perform better than the right? They're dramatically different, and we have to try and narrow down what component could it be. And this is where segmentating your data, slicing it, and looking at, okay, how did it perform across different sectors gets really exciting. So again, the first thing I looked at, okay, let's look at geographies. Okay, within the UK, just looking at the customers coming from the UK, we see a much higher uplift in conversion rates. Great. Why could that be? Well, if you look at the design, all the kind of trust indicators are quite UK-centric. We had quotes from The Economist, The Guardian, and the Financial Times. They're going to speak well to a UK audience. The same with the activity map. The reviews were in English and also showed a lot of UK customers. So that could be some explanation, again, heightened by the fact that the German conversion rate went down. So you see, okay, so maybe we're not optimizing for a German audience because these are quite UK-centric indicators, and the German audience might need something different. So I think this again speaks for we should be segmenting our traffic when they land on the page. Currently, we're only segmenting based on experiments, but I think moving forward now, there'll be more segmentation on where's the traffic coming from, because there's a lot of abilities to do that. Especially again with grades, that's a great with filters that we can quite quickly on initial landing filter our customers' versions. My favorite, IE8, had some great results. I think there's a personal campaign within the team now to stop supporting IE8, and I think actually we must have done it by default. Now, we looked into these data, and what we found is that our quality assurance for IE8 might not be so good, because our designer wanted to go mobile first, responsive. We didn't take into account that media queries is not supported by IE8. So what IE8 customers got was the mobile version that didn't actually work. Surprise, surprise, conversion rate went down.
What about the version version 3? It didn't work at all?
It didn't work, no, I think the data dropped out, yeah. So it was way below. Okay, but at least here from the experiment segmenting, we found some key areas. And this gives a lot more nuance to the 4% we had to begin with. And then we went for, and this is one of our key growth areas. And probably was a bit worrying when we saw that conversion went down. We have a promotions that if you invite 3 friends after you do a transaction, we give you £50. It's a pretty sweet deal. So if you invite 3 people that do a transaction, you get £50 into your account, or 60-something euros. So it was a bit of alarm bells ringing when we saw that the conversion rate dropped with our new designs. And this is here where being a bit mathematical and having your statistical eyes on is important, because actually if you calculate the statistical significance, you see that actually there was no impact with the new designs. They're not, the p-values for all of them are way above what there should be in an experiment. An experiment should have 0.005 is kind of what we work with for an experiment to be valid. But this gives us another cue. Okay, wow. So for invite program, our new designs has literally no effect. It's the same as the initial design in many ways. even though we didn't have enough data. Why could that be? Well, what differentiates the invite program is that they've already got a personal endorsement. They're not just landing on the site without anyone physically endorsing the site. The last segment solves your question. We looked at Facebook traffic. People coming from Facebook, we saw nearly a 40% uplift in the winning variation. And what's the one thing that the Facebook traffic is guaranteed to have than all other source of traffic? The user is going to be signed into Facebook. And what's the one feature on the new design that's dependent on someone being logged into Facebook? We had on the top of actually above the fold, we'd introduced what Facebook calls a face pile, which actually doesn't have a very nice sounding name, but it essentially shows which ones of your specific friends have liked or used the service. With the name, so it listed people that you know that have used the service and endorsed it. So the fact that you have a personal endorsement was actually contributed. We looked at the numbers a bit different ways, and we found that actually this had the most significant impact for the overall 4% increase in conversion was down to this little feature that we put above the fold. Hopefully that gave you a bit of food for thought for thinking about experiments and looking at conversion on the sites or products you're developing. My name is Mark McGloin. I'm a conversion engineer at TransferWise. Thank you very much.
So now is a good time for all the questions that you queued up before. Let's do about 10 or 15 minutes Q&A, or shorter if we run out of questions. And then we'll be moving downstairs for a more social side tonight. The floor is yours, the audience.
What does it take you to launch a new country? To provide service to my friends who could transfer money to Colombia, if you can.
I think I actually can answer that. So, opening a new country is quite a troublesome business actually. It means that sending money into the country is quite simple. You can send via some networks into the country and there is not much regulation ruling that. But the other way around, actually accepting money is quite difficult. It means that if you accept money in the country, means you have to actually be regulated in that country. And all the countries have different rules. For example, if you're going into the States, it means that you have to have 50 licenses. In every state in the United States of America has different regulation. Same thing, India, South Latin America, and so on and so on. So to go into the country, one thing is the massive thing is regulation. Second thing is building a system that can actually deliver the money there. Essentially, you have to have connectivity to the network. And the third thing is actually what Martin just spoke about is how to get the users in that country. It's good to have a presence there, but how to get users actually know what they're doing, know what they're doing there. And first month has been greatly helpful for them. I think in Hungary, we had one guy who invited like something 400 different users in Hungary, and he was so excited about TransferWise service that he just went over the parties and talked about, hey, use TransferWise. So this guy actually writes me every day. Like, oh, I have a problem there. Can you fix that? And can you do it better? And so on. So these guys who are essentially making marketing for us. So 3 different parts: regulation, technical integration, and building the marketing or building the presence in the country.
About technical integrations, can you give examples of, for example, in UK and in, I don't know, some Africa, which partners, banks, institutions, what kind of integrations do you have there? How many, and it's kind of, you have some idea?
It's quite simple if you are talking about developed worlds. means that you have bank accounts in different countries. Means that you don't need to have some magic bank network integration and have bank accounts where you can download statements and upload batch files or you do the API version. In these cases are quite simple. If you're going to some weird countries, for example US or Canada, they don't have a concept of wire transfer. So if in Europe everybody's doing the transfer, it's like common knowledge. In Canada, they're having something called interactor, means that it's essentially mobile check. You're gonna like, if I talk to the Canadians, they're like, why should I go to login my internet bank and do transfer for you? Why, like, in Canada it's so simple. I'm gonna call the bank and say, like, I want to transfer money to market, and that's it. So they have different concepts for that, and integrations with these are difficult. So the second example, ACH in the US is kind of good thing to have because customers can give you kind of like bank account details and you can make money. It's direct debit in Europe. What's the problem there is that you have 5 days where the bank gives you money and after 5 days the bank can say, hey, there wasn't actually money, so I'm taking it back. So that's a good thing. Another thing is that they have kind of unlimited fraud. Fraud, frankly, means that if you're coming back in a year and saying, hey, I didn't allow that TransferWise, the bank can take back money. So there is different sides. In Europe, it's quite simple. In a lot of countries, the bank networks are quite difficult. So you have to have knowledge from all of them.
What do you do with the excess of money? Or I guess that you're matching the amounts of going in both directions, but you almost always will have some stuff left on one of the sides. What do you do with that? Or on the other hand, sometimes you don't like
somebody asked from job interview or whatever occasion, how do you balance your accounts? Honest answer is that we try to balance this, but it's not a priority for us. It means that I love to make an example of buying bread. If you're going to Rimi and buying Kyrgyzstan, it means that one piece of bread is quite expensive in terms of actually making that bread. But if you're going and buying medium breads, it's quite cheap bread. So we can balance our accounts quite cheaply. And as we grow, the accounts are difference between balances are actually going smaller and smaller, so it's not a big problem.
So for the money, actually you're using the regular bank wire transfers actually to send the actual money to another country if you need it?
Yes. So we are acting as a different side if we don't have money there. Sometimes we don't need to transfer money around. We have bank connections and we can do FX trades. And if you're doing FX trades and if you have good connections, good liquidity, the contract, it's quite easy and cheap to do. But it's really hard to do if you are a regular person. What we're doing while we're not doing business payments is that if you're a big business, you have treasuries and good deals with the banks. But most of us here, it's quite hard to actually have good deal from the bank. So we are acting as somebody who can make these deals and provide this to our customers.
So it depends on banks and when to get them down.
So we're quite sure that it's possible to live without bank stocks. So the banks as an entity is not crucial in transferring money. There is a lot of different ways how to go into the bank, not bank, but monetary networks and you can transfer money. So the banks are not essential, but it's a way, it's the thing that has built that's quite easy to use, so we can use this infrastructure to do our business.
But coming back to the technical answer, this is balance operation. So if you have 10 banks, you have different amounts of currencies in those banks, And you know that one way of the route is higher than another way. Let's say everybody is sending money from Estonia to the UK, but not vice versa. So you're piling up money in one bank. And now you need to balance it between the banks. You know the trends, like how many payments you have in different banks, so you can pre-calculate, like, okay, I don't know what money at that time, and then you need to pay there. But you can't do the full prediction because the volumes can vary quite a lot. And another question is, maybe it's cheaper to borrow the money than transfer the money. So you need to think all of the options and then calculate the best option. So we haven't done that yet. We have done the pre-work for that, and are going to implement at least somehow.
Right now, whatever solution they have, is it the balancing, is it all automated or kind of?
Currently, it's pretty much manual, but as we grow, we will automate.
So each time you add a country, it's kind of, you need to automate more because of
yes, and even from growth perspective. So in the finally what we want to have automated system is just everything as much as possible automatically. But yeah, this is the long-term goal.
How many countries are you in right now?
The number is kind of volatile.
Unfortunately,
I
know that we have 245 directions where we transfer money, but this is a currency direction. Like, for example, GDP to euro and that. So all the combinations are I think 245 countries that are correct transfer.
And then there are currencies that we only accept as source for target as well. So it's not quite the square calculation.
What's your biggest fear from either technological or legal point of view? What's the biggest threat to TransferWise?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is pretty easy to transfer.
I'm not sure if there is one single thing, but of course as we are building financial services, everything about security and trust is really important. Because as you saw from the presentation, trust is something which helps us grow. So we need to keep people's trust. So everything related to that, like fraud cases, security, internal security.
Because ultimately, that's the goal, which we put a lot of focus on. So one bar can break the relationship with the customer or easy, but it's hard to regain.
Maybe it's interesting to tell you, so regarding the plumber, so we don't have any PV also, or PV tests. We are focused on
Who are your main customers? Is it like up to 30 years old male or how elderly people that accept themselves?
There are different segments. So a very big part is expats. Expats in actually all kinds of countries. UK still is our home market, so it's a big part of the traffic still goes outside from UK, so GBP to other currencies. But also we're growing pretty well in Germany, for instance. We've also done a bit of a marketing push there. But there are quite interesting use cases. So people buying real estate abroad, people paying their school tuition fees, things like that we both worked on, like in a more focused way, and then just use cases for whom we make a lot of sense.
It's actually interesting because we did one survey among our customers, and a large proportion of users are actually IT specialists. People actually know how to use our service. One problem that we actually will have in the future is that we will get more of like the mainstream ones.
And bankers.
We actually have bankers as customers.
Maybe you already do it, but it's kind of, as you gave examples of who needs the TransferWise, I believe not everybody knows this, so maybe you should put a large banner, because if I know some friend
he needs this kind of service, I would like to see what cases are actually useful. It's kind of, then I can recommend. Right now, I don't need it right at the moment, but I would recommend it like I need the use case. So maybe share it with the market. So that question also, how does your infrastructure look right now? How many servers is that kind? Where do you host it? How many administrators? Just to understand the scale right now.
Well, it doesn't take many administrators to admin many servers.
Depends.
So we are few servers.
Not dozens. Yeah.
Happy with the number, I see you with a smile. So happy with the number and see you with a smile.
I'm still happy.
Whereas then hosting locally or in cloud or dedicated partner hosting.
Yeah, right now we're, let's say we're renting hardware, so we don't host like in that sense. We don't have a cool server room anywhere. Don't intend to.
But I guess why we're smiling is that we can do so much, like one good number with the number of servers that we do have. We don't need a large number.
So if you think about the load and third person TransferWise is going to see where you want to TransferWise. 70% has behind the scenes. And where we need like a lot of processing power is when we are doing payments. So going back to Alvar's presentation at the start, so we get the payments which we need to transfer. And there are different processes that we do. So we need part where we need to get a payment and then the bank transaction. So it's worth noting the hardware there. And then we need to do a lot of things to pay money out. And this usually happens during banking hours and during working hours, because we need some manual work also. So it means we have quite big peaks in the system. We have in the mornings where we have to do all the processing, and then it starts stable. So this is going to last forever, because time to do this is always the same. But as we're growing, we trust that. This is one of the challenges.
Two more public questions and we'll start that one-to-one. Okay, you go first.
Martin mentioned that the last priority. And if it is, then what's the current priority?
Growth. Anything we can do to grow more and anything we can do to sustain it.
What about scalability?
It's the other side of growth. Scalability has to be there in order to support the growth. So it's kind of like implied.
I have a question regarding if you collecting all this data, you have kind of trends of relation between public holidays and events. For example, for Christmas, everyone is transferring money on, I don't know, any kind of that.
There are patterns, definitely, or which are kind of obvious, so people get paid at the end of the month, stuff like that. So probably nothing very peculiar, like, and we don't have that big volumes to get any really funky discoveries from there, but makes sense.
Yeah, one case is that when people are working abroad and they are sending money home, so usually the payday is pay for us.
How often do you raise capital?
As often as needed.